This is Kelly.
And this is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator. Today we have a special guest, back by popular demand, Mama Mia.
My house, my rules. I don't have a choice.
Oh, she wasn't going to join us today, but you know.
She goes, wait, I have rapping to do. And then she comes back.
I do. I do have rapping. I got stuff to do, but
we're irresistible. So we're recording before Christmas. So happy, Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Well, it'll be after Christmas by the time you guys hear it. So Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah.
Amy has a Christmas present for us today. We're calling this episode Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And we're dedicating this episode to probably our most, what would you say, Amy? Dedicated listener, Jay.
Yeah, Jay's always been interested in my job. So he did write us a really nice email, and he was talking in particular about airplanes. And I told Kelly, I have a case. It wasn't necessarily my case, but I worked a case in the lab, and it was about an airplane crash. So I said, well, it's not necessarily long enough to talk about an entire episode about. So I said, let's throw all of these different transportation cases together and we'll make it a special. So it's a gift for you all, I guess.
But we don't know if this is going to be a one-parter or two-parter. It just depends on how long-winded Amy is this go.
How long-winded, it's how informative I am. You're welcome.
There you go.
Exactly. So
all those science facts.
Yeah, exactly. So learning you guys up on all these things here. So I guess I'll go in order then with planes. So like I said, this wasn't my case, but I was working in the lab that day. It was a weekend. So you are a little bit short-staffed on the weekend. So you only have one doctor that works the weekends. And then you have your usual district investigators. And then you have your partner that is on call, and then you work in the morgue that day. And so we had a case that came in from the northern part of the state that was bordering another state, which is quite a windy part, which is kind of notorious for plane crashes. So in this particular part of the state, all of these smaller planes tend to crash up there. So it's like a high turbulent part. And actually there's an Air Force base that is up in this area too, which their planes also crash quite frequently up there, and not due to necessarily plane issues, but due to weather conditions.
And people keep flying in the same area. People, do not fly over that area.
Why don't they know?
Well, it's kind of like you hit a pocket and then it kind of like throws the plane. It's not like it's in these areas. It's like, oh, it looks really nice out today. And they might tell you this is good flying conditions. And then it's like you could be descending or ascending and then you just hit kind of like this air pocket.
Oh, I've hit an air pocket before. I was going to Vegas and I'm not particularly nice on the plane. I'm not saying I'm a bad passenger, but...
What do you mean nice just on the plane or off the plane?
I don't talk to people that are sitting next to me. I don't engage. My headphones go in. I'm a little bit of a nervous flyer. The more I fly, the more nervous I get. I don't know why. I'm fine on like international flights because I feel like the planes are bigger and they're a little bit more steady. But flying to Vegas from where I live always hits turbulence. And this one time, I think it was Dad's birthday. It was a big birthday. We were all flying in and I was asleep and I hit an air pocket. And for those of you who've never hit an air pocket, it's like going on Splash Mountain at Disneyland. It's just a drop, or like Tower of Terror, or now it's Guardians of the Galaxy. It just drops. And there's nothing that will wake you up faster than a drop like that. And I was very nice to the person next to me. In fact, probably too nice that the guy wanted my phone number. And then I think Amy was sharing a room with me later on that night, and we got to see all the pictures that he was sending me. And so...
Wait a minute. You get on to me about meeting people at small...
I was just going to say that. And I'm like,
Oh, nobody sends me pictures.
No, they just stalk you, Mom. They just stalk you and pretend like they don't know you.
You weren't married then, though, either. So.
No, I wasn't married, but it was weird because I think he wanted to meet up with us, he played it like, oh yeah, maybe I can, meet up with you guys later. And we're like, I said, oh yeah, we're going out to so-and-so place. So yeah, I mean, I think the shock of,
she warns me. I just can't believe it.
This has been a while. I feel like this was 8 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just when you have that adrenaline rush and you're like, I'm alive.
I hope you weren't bearing your soul to this person.
No, I think I just woke up and I was
You
just
grab
like,
him or what?
I don't know what I did, but it was enough for me to because I hate those kind of.
Okay, then. So yeah, they still have that flight, don't they?
That's true. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that you don't expect. It's not like they can just measure the air. Here's this specific pocket in the air. So, and especially on those tiny planes too, it's not like they're big commercial planes either. So that can recover from those types of things. So this particular plane, I think it was a small prop plane and it was a little tiny, 4-seater. So it was this father of 2 small children. And then their father-in-law was one who was actually flying the plane. And yeah, the kids were small, toddler age. Like I said, the father-in-law was the one flying the plane. And yep, they hit a pocket and then the plane crashed right at the border of the state. And of course, when it crashed, it just went up in flames and all kinds of accelerant there with the gas of the plane. And of course, when it hit, it slid for, I don't know, half a mile or so, probably more than that, I'm sure. And so the investigator that went up to the scene, he sent in as much as he could that was left over from the individuals of the plane and then sent them in. So that's 4 individuals that you're just trying to pick through at that point. So it's you get these body bags of people or more body parts and clothing at that point. So you're getting parts of planes because at this point it's what's melted in with clothing and there might be body parts in that too because everything's just kind of melted together because it's such high heat that it's you don't even know what's what at that point. You can just kind of let the doctor determine that. And then we have the x-rays that we can run these things through as well. So anytime we ever have a fire death, we have to put obviously anything that's suspicious and we collect evidence for that. But specifically a plane crash, the FAA, they require a very special type of investigation because they're required, because it is federal. The U.S. Department of Transportation has this specific type of investigation that they do. You have to follow this whole thing. It's a 14-page long thing that they do. So we have to collect the evidence of the clothing and stuff in paint cans is what we do the evidence in. So the clothing and plane parts that come in. And that just contains the noxious smells and anything that could be flammable that could combust. We put them in paint cans. And then you have to seal the paint can, the top of them. You have to hit them closed just to seal any of the smells in there. So I specifically remember the little boy, he had these little John Deere boots and they were teeny tiny. I don't know, that big. I don't know what size.
Amy, it almost looked like the size of an egg or a small little, a mandarin size is what you...
Yeah, they were tiny. I just remember there was only one of them, one little John Deere boot that was left over from him. And then I think we could find most of the body from the children's dad. And so that's what we did most of the autopsy of. And so basically what they do is it falls within our jurisdiction of the state. So anyone who dies, so the military does the same thing. It's when there's a death that's federal, the body belongs to the federal government, right? But it's still within our jurisdiction. So we have to do our own autopsy, but then the federal government takes over their body after and does their own autopsy as well. We do our autopsy, which is a full autopsy, and then we follow the FAA rules of what they want. Like I said, it's this like 14-page long thing. And they call this like their medical responsibility in aerospace incidents and accidents. And so basically the whole purpose of this is to see like, one, was this like the responsibility of the pilot, or was it like weather conditions, or was this the plane? Was it like maintenance of the plane, or was it like faulty plane parts or engine? So they basically have to figure out, that's why they do this whole investigation. So they want to see, did this pilot have like a heart attack, or were they intoxicated? Was it like something weather related where it was just a complete freak accident? So basically they like try to find like the black box of the plane, and then they can see the recordings of everything that happens during this flight in conjunction to basically all the medical things that happened to this pilot during this time and everyone else that's on this flight as well. So they take toxicology that's analyzed by their bioaeronautical science research. They take the autopsy and injury data that's sent for analysis to their aeromedical protection and survival research lab. And then they'll obtain and they'll store, analyze incidental and accidental reports. They'll keep track of that, and they keep that for statistical research, because if they see a pattern, it's like cars, right? If you see a certain type of car that's malfunctioning, they'll do like a recall on that, and they'll do the same thing for planes. If they see like a certain plane that's having the same malfunction, it's like the same thing for planes as it would be for cars. And so they'll do their aircraft occupant injury, in-craft air flight crew incapacitation, other human performance information. So like what they were doing at the time before the crash, what happened during the crash, information on airmen involved, aerospace incidents and accidents. So like I said, they do like this whole 14-page thing, and they actually request what they want from you as far as like during like the autopsy. And so this then gets sent to like Washington, D.C. And so basically it's like, here's this cooler that they give you, and then they tell you this is like the certain amount of baggies that come in this, and then like the tubes of like toxicology, and then the types of specimens that they want in this as well.
I have a question. When you do toxicology, where are you taking that from?
As far as like from the pilot?
Yeah. Where would you take that from?
So, like I said, it's going to be sent to Washington, D.C. Basically, what this whole thing is telling you why they do this. So, it's autopsied biological samples from civil aviation accident pilot fatalities are submitted to the Civil Aerospace Medical Institute. So, they call this CAMI for toxicological evaluation. However, such evaluation is dependent upon types and amounts of submitted samples. So, like I was saying earlier, like, we didn't even get whole bodies back of these people. So sometimes you need to know what type of condition these bodies are going to be in. And it's the same thing like when we get decomposed bodies. Sometimes you need to know what type of condition they're in. So you just kind of take whatever you have and submit what you have of these people and just hope that that's enough. So it says, in obtaining suitable samples is governed by the nature of the accident. So like, if these people were completely burned up, you just basically send what you have left over of that person. Characteristics of those samples and associated toxicological processing have not been well documented in literature. So basically what they're saying is they want better documentation. That's why they want these things sent in. So therefore, the CAMI toxicological database was searched for these aspects. So CAMI received samples from pilot fatalities, and approximately 80% of these between 1990 and 2000 aviation specimens reported by the National Transportation Safety Board. So that's only 10 years. That's not really a lot of data, because if you think about it, plane accidents really don't happen that often comparative to like car accidents. So that's why they want more of this done for research. Accidents and cases during June to September were higher than other months, because think about in certain places, like in the Midwest, what happens during that time? You have a lot more storms like tornadoes where it's windier. So you're going to have maybe a higher chance of plane crashes. Like I said, they're going to have a higher rate. So for example, out of 1,891 cases processed between certain years, 1,200 had at least adequate amounts of blood, urine, and vitreous humor. So vitreous is from your eyeballs. Yeah. So you can get like a electrolyte count from your eyes. So basically what they're saying is they want sufficient amounts so that they can get a better read of what they're getting back from people. So what they are technically wanting when they are getting these kits to people is they have an instruction sheet of exactly how you're supposed to take these samples and how you're supposed to send them in. So they provide you with what they want in this box. And so they want blood, and then they want exactly...
In a situation like this, though, where they've been burned up and blown up, do they have like blood left in their body?
It depends on from where. Sometimes you might be able to get blood from like the heart if there's not a fully, I don't want to say cooked through.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Everything's cooked.
Sometimes you can get some femoral blood from the femoral vein in the leg. It's just dependent. Sometimes you might not be able to submit a blood sample. So there again, like they were saying in their abstract portion of this, is like submit what you can if it's a really good piece of or a good sample. So if you do submit this, they're saying submit a 40 milliliter sample, because what they want from this is to be able to test for like drug analysis and blood cyanide. Then for urine, there again, you might not be able to get urine because not everyone has a good urine sample. And sometimes people will excrete their urine upon death. They want 100 milliliters, which 100 milliliters is quite a bit of urine. So there again, they will test for alcohol, drug, and glucose. So like their sugar levels. So especially if they're diabetic, that can also be if they have like anything like a stroke or like a seizure or something like that. Vitreous humor, that's from your eyes. And so they want 2 millimeters. So sometimes you can get enough of that just from one eye. And there again, they'll check for alcohol and your sugar level. So the reason why they check alcohol from different places is because you would know, right? It metabolizes at a different rate between your urine and your blood. So you'd be able to get a better reading of how much alcohol would be in their system at a different time. Spinal fluid, which that might be the hardest thing to get if it's even available. They said they'll take the available amount. There again, they would test for alcohol and then do a drug analysis, which we don't even do that at the medical examiner's office. Then they check bile. So bile would be from your stomach. So there again, drugs. Then they would check for immune stuff. And then they would also do that for like if they don't have a urine sample, because they're checking for at what rate like something is processing in your body. Gastric contents, so that'd be from like your intestines. So there again, drug analysis. All the rest of these are going to be drug and alcohol. So liver and muscle, spleen, lung, kidney, brain, and heart. And those are just going to be little tiny chunks, like little tiny samples that they just cut off. And they just put those in little baggies. And every time they take a little tiny sample of these things, what they do is they have to fill out a whole form for every one of these. And they put these in a bag, and then they have to fill out a form, and they put the form with the bag on the outside of the bag. And it's a very long, tedious process because it's federal. So it says the given types and amounts of specimens are for the ideal situation whereon multiple specimens given are available enough amounts. So basically why they want like so much of each one of these is because hopefully if you don't have one, you have the other available where they can test for the same thing if you don't have enough of one.
What if you don't have samples of any? Because most of these, when I expect like to hear about a plane crash, I expect that they're all go up in flames, right?
I would think it would matter how much fuel
is still in the plane.
Actually, typically, you will still see some muscle and brain tissue, even if they are cooked. They're just going to be shrunken down really small. And so you can still take some portions of those, but what they do, and even with like your liver and stuff, when you're decomposed really badly, what they'll do is they'll take that portion and they'll put them in a blender and they blend those up. And then they'll test them like they would in toxicology, like your blood. And that's how they test them for your drugs.
That's creative.
Yeah, I know. It sounds really disgusting because I can remember like going into the toxicology lab sometimes and like seeing this like green looking liver and then just like plopping it into a blender and like washing it. I'm just like, ugh, yuck. Yeah, and it smells so rank and it's just disgusting.
You talked about brisket for Christmas, which, by the way, guys, Amy's not getting brisket for Christmas. She's getting a steak instead. But I would no longer be able to eat smoothies.
You're welcome. It's even better when you get to smell it, though. So, yeah, and you're like watching it go around and around, and you're just like, yum, it's green and it smells even better. So, super great. Yeah. So anyways, we do all that stuff. We do the same testing. We might not test like the same things like the spinal fluid and stuff. Like we're not testing it to that level. They basically do that on their own statistical type of research. Like there's no benefit for us to do that. We can find out the same information for less. And we basically don't have the same type of technology to do that stuff as the federal government does. But yeah, so then we send that in to DC. And that's what they get. So it wasn't anyone at fault that was flying the plane. It wasn't anything that was wrong with the plane. And it was basically just the weather that caused this plane accident. And it was super unfortunate that it's unfortunate when anyone dies in a plane accident, but it was unfortunate that there were children also on this flight. Yeah, that's what happens when you have plane accidents, and that's how we process those. We basically treat it as if it is like a suspicious case, and we have to collect evidence and process it in that way, and that's how we also treat any type of fire evidence. We put them in paint cans, and we have to seal them up, and we have to write our initials on it. We put the tape over it once we sealed it in there, and have to create an evidence log and everything like that, just as we would anything else. So that's how we deal with plane accidents. So
that's a lot.
Yes, it's so tedious, but you want to make sure that you do it right, because especially if you're dealing with something that could either be like a plane malfunction, especially so, and you don't have a lot of evidence left to do an autopsy on 4 people. If you only have like 1 or 2 people that you can do an autopsy on, you have to be especially careful with how you're treating the evidence, and you're like picking through the body bags just looking for something.
And was this the gentleman on the plane married with the one with the kids?
Yeah, and that was his father-in-law that was flying the plane.
So that woman lost 3 of her immediate family plus her parent.
Mm-hmm. I think she had 1 son. She had a baby that was still with her that couldn't go with him.
That's sad. That's a lot.
So that's planes. So we're moving on to trains.
Woohoo! Choo-choo. Chugging along.
I know. We're literally chugging. I don't know. This might have been the same weekend. I can't remember because this was also not my case. Oh, wait, no, I know for sure this wasn't. We were still in our old building, but I remember being so excited to go to this because I had never had a train accident and they don't happen that often. So I remember like begging the pathologist to let me go with my partner to this because I was like, please, I never get to work like crazy cases like this, which I do, but the pathologist liked me. And so I was like, I've never seen a train accident. So he was like, yeah, that's fine. So
I guess there's not really trains. I guess out of all of these things are the least
common.
Yeah, that people see. Even though the city that we grew up in, we had to cross train tracks every day to basically go do anything. So I'm like, we always saw trains, or especially going to junior college, because I think I had to cross 2 train tracks and I would sometimes get stuck behind the train. It'd be like 45 minutes later. You're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, where I live now too, there are trains everywhere. Like the whole city was built around trains. But the reason why I came to this whole idea for this podcast theme today was because being back home and we were going out to watch hockey the other night, and mom and dad had made a comment about a train, coming through, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then we were getting ready to leave, and then sure enough, there was a train and everyone was going up the steps to go over, and I was like, I'm not going over. I was like, I'm crossing in front of this train because it stopped, and everyone was running across. I was like, why are you guys running? I was like, you know how long it takes for a train to build up speed? And I was like, I'm walking. And so I was like, light bulb. So I came up with the idea for this episode, and I was like, this is great. So came up with the idea of this. And I was like, I can't believe I forgot about this case. Of course, because I don't actually have the case file for this. It was because it was like my partner's case. But when he got the call for this, they weren't sure at the time the exact surrounding circumstances of it. All they knew was that a train ran over someone. And I was like, ooh, crazy. So, of course, I was driving and I sped all the way to get there. I turned on the lights, not green, blue and red lights, our flashing lights to get there. I was like, move, I got to get to this train. So,
yeah, if they were green, they'd be like the Grinch lights.
Yeah, I got to get there. I got places to be, things to see. So, yeah, we get there. Which, there again, the trains, because they cross over state lines, they're also governed by the federal administration. So theirs is the Federal Railroad Administration. So it's the Transport Safety Board. And they are governed by an independent entity as well. So they're an independent federal agency. Initially, when we got there, we were like, hey, can we watch your video on your train to see what happened leading up to it? And they actually told us no, we can't. We have to get permission for that. And we're like, oh, okay. Which I get because they have to go through these steps too. It'd be us dealing with the FBI, I guess, because it's federal, it's not state.
I didn't even know they had video on trains, but I guess it makes sense now.
Yeah, everyone has video now. But that's because, a lot of people actually will run out in front of trains or cars that will try to, speed out in front of trains to beat trains, stuff like that. Just cover your butt. So yeah, they have cameras, of course, in the front. But what they told us when we got there, they're like, yeah, we saw a body lying across the tracks. And they said we blew the horn on the train. But of course, we can't stop this train in time for someone to get off the tracks. And they said,
do they at least try to slow down, or do they just keep going?
It's like them putting on the emergency brakes, but it takes a mile for a train to stop.
Oh, so they wouldn't have been able to see the body that far away anyway.
No, they're like, we pulled on the horn. They're like, there's no way we could have stopped in time. The person didn't move at all. And so they're like, well, we hit them, obviously, and they continued to slow down. But by that time, it was too late. So they got out, and basically what you can see is on the front, there's splatter. And then as you keep walking down the train and you look up underneath the train, you just see brain matter underneath the train. And you just keep walking, and you see just more spatter. And then when you get to the point of origin where the train initially met the body, the person was lying perpendicular to the tracks. So they were lying across the tracks. So her head, or I guess it would be her neck, was across one track, and then her legs were across the other track. So she didn't try to move at all. The rest of her body was still in the middle. Really, if she was lying in the middle of the track, her whole body, it wouldn't have hit her at all because it's raised up high enough. And so we were looking through her stuff, and they separated the cars.
So wait, I do have a question. So when the train comes in, then I envision that it cut her head off and her legs off, and then her torso was just left. in the middle?
Yeah. So it wasn't all of her legs. It was like basically below her knees.
Oh, yeah, because you would have to be pretty long. I guess the trains are pretty wide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The train tracks are pretty wide. So we were like looking through her stuff, and she had like empty bottles of alcohol, and we did find a syringe, a used syringe, but no ID, nothing like that. And so we're thinking like, oh, poop, like, did like her body get dumped here, or like,
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I know. And so we're like, crap, what do we do? And then we're like, well, did she purposely do this? And so we're like, well, I guess we should just pick up the rest of her. And so it's like, you grab the body bag and you basically just like drag it behind you, like the whole way as you're picking up pieces. And so it's like, you don't realize how big trains actually are, because it basically just crushed her entire head by the time it like got to her, which I guess I didn't even realize how long it took like trains to even slow down. So freight trains, they can go between 40 to 80 miles per hour. And then like high speed freight trains can go up to 120 miles per hour, which I'm thinking like this is like within city limits. So I'm sure like this is not going 120 miles per hour. But like one of those freight cars, just empty by itself, that weighs 30 tons, just one of those cars. So that's 60,000 pounds empty, just one of those. So I'm like, well, that's why it takes so long to slow down. So yeah, we had like asked around. I was asking the cops like, well, do you guys know who this is? Like we try to do, they have what's called Morpho or Morph, and it's like a digital fingerprint machine. And you can put like their finger on this machine. It's like fingerprinting machine, and it can like look them up in the system. But of course, like nothing came back to her.
You have to fingerprint because it's been so long. Do you do fingerprinting when you get your driver's license?
Yeah, you do like one finger.
Okay. So she didn't have a driver's license then?
Not that I was aware of. No, nothing came back to her. And then if she was arrested or something at some point, she would have had, not that it always worked, because like if she's from out of state, like this would only work for that state. So if she was from out of state somewhere, you would have to send this to like the FBI or something. So if she was from out of state and had a driver's license from out of state, you'd have to send this into the FBI. This would only work for like that state.
What if she was a minor? Do you know how old she was? Or at that point, you probably didn't, because she didn't have a head anymore, right? Like you didn't see, I guess you could kind of tell by her hands if her hands look a little bit older.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty subjective, right? I mean, you would just assume someone that has alcohol and drugs would just be older. I don't know. That's a hard thing to judge by. And she had like a backpack and stuff, but yeah, and it was cold too. And she like wasn't wearing a lot of clothes. So you're thinking just like a migrant, homeless person, which like that area over there is like where a lot of them hung out. And there were other like syringes and stuff back there. So I think I was just assuming like she was just there to do drugs. And so we did finally take her back to, the office. And I think we did end up getting fingerprints on her through FBI, but she ended up overdosing. And basically it wasn't even like the train that killed her. Like she passed out on the tracks that way. So we got the video. Finally, we did get the video from, it wouldn't be Amtrak, but from the Federal Railroad Administration. And that's just how she passed out. Like she didn't move at all. She didn't even attempt to move, like from what we could see in the video. Like she was already out. So the train had like nothing to do with it.
Oh, so the train didn't kill her. It was the overdose that killed her.
Yeah, she was drugs.
Yeah. Was she dead though before she passed out? Or we I guess
I'm pretty sure the drugs had already
killed her.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they put down, was that the drugs had already gotten her before. So I think they put like drug induced, and then you could put like blunt force trauma. I mean, it's hard to say like one before the other, but like she did have drugs in her system. So.
And was she unhoused? Did the people that were around there the other like homeless people? Did they know her?
Oh, they weren't going to talk.
Oh, because I guess drugs. They don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah, none of them want to talk after that point. So it's just kind of like they're not going to say anything, and because they don't want to get in trouble.
Well, it's not like they had anything to do with it.
Unless it was their drugs. So yeah, they're not going to say anything.
Do you know what drugs it was?
Probably meth.
Oh.
I mean, that's just what's common around the area.
Right. Was she skinny?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Don't start taking meth, Kelly.
I think that's probably really expensive, so I think we're good.
Yeah, you just do shake and bake method. You know the shake and bake method? You can make your own.
The chicken bake method?
Put it in a bag. They shake it up. Anyways.
Don't start telling people how to make drugs.
I've never heard of that. Almost shake and bake?
I did take a class when I was doing my criminal justice. That's one of my professors. She was doing something with her PhD about meth, and she taught us all these
101 in drug making?
Yeah, something about all the different ways to make meth, and that was one of the ways was the shake and bake. We can Google it later.
That's when we'll have Jeff on. Not that Jeff's a druggie, but
I'm going to tell Jeff you're accusing of him knowing all the ways to make meth now.
No, but sometimes we're watching TV and I'm like, you see, when you're on the shows, like the people are in, like, it's always a hardware store, right? Where they're buying like fertilizer and they're buying all this stuff. And I'm like, what are they doing? And he's like, they're making drugs.
I told you. Well, they're making bombs. That's the OKC bomber. That's how he blew up.
You told me one, but I was watching Yellowstone and I couldn't figure out why these guys were going in and buying all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, drugs. And I was like, oh.
Live outside your bubble, Kelly. I don't know what to tell you.
Hey, I don't do drugs, Mom. You'd be proud.
I'm proud.
I don't know how to make drugs either. You'd be proud.
I wouldn't know if you were.
Now, your other doctor, I don't know.
She's taking 101 in drug making.
Shake and bake. You start hearing shake and bake.
She had a professor teaching her,
She might see me in the kitchen one day with a bag.
Shaking.
And be like, don't worry about it.
I'm shaking and baking. Anyway.
We still have one more to do here, and it's automobiles. So,
all right, let's do the automobile.
Okay, so, oh my gosh, this one was my case out of the three, and it was really cold that night, and oh my gosh, it was late at night too, and I think some of my coldest cases always occurred on the 40, on Interstate 40, and just because it was so windy. And this guy, he just so happened to run out of gas, and he needed to get gas. So he had the bright idea to basically play Frogger and beat traffic and run across the 40 back to his vehicle.
Okay, explain what Frogger is first, because I don't know that everybody knows what Frogger is.
Okay, well, Frogger, is the game where the frog, he starts off on the sidewalk and there's a street and there's cars that are driving down the street, and then the frog has to beat the traffic to get across to the other side of the street. So he can't get run over by the cars. So Mom's covering her face.
Mom, we haven't done that either. We haven't played Frogger in traffic.
Well, that's what this is equivalent to, because, you can never beat traffic. You can beat trains when they're not moving, but you can't beat cars. So, moral of the story. So, this guy, especially when the speed limit is 70 miles an hour, they might look really far away, but they'll catch up really fast. It's physics, okay? So, this guy, especially if you're carrying, your gas can, that's going to slow you down even more. Okay, so mass, right? This is physics, speed, acceleration, mass. So he decides he's going to run across 3 lanes of traffic to where his car is, and he gets into the first lane. And guess what? He gets hit by...
He didn't make it past the first lane.
What's even better, it's an off-duty police officer.
Oh, yeah, but it's at night, right?
Yes, and this guy's tired and he doesn't see him, right? Because it's dark. So he goes through his windshield and then out through the rear.
Oh,
With his gas can still?
No, that thing goes flying.
Was it full at this point, or was it, this is right when he ran out of gas?
No, this was full.
no.
Oh, it was full. So he was coming back.
He was making his way back.
Oh, he'd already made it across once.
Yeah, the gas can was empty then.
Yeah.
Less mass.
Physics.
He's flying at this point, right? So through the cop's windshield, back out. Then another car runs him over. Then the third car at this point hits him and is dragging him for at least like a quarter of a mile to a half a mile.
Wait, how did the third person not stop?
It's dark.
He's trying to slow down because it's 70 miles an hour.
Oh, because I'm thinking at this point you have a pileup because you have the first car, you have the second car.
All these people are trying to slow down. It's 70 miles an hour, especially the cop who's driving way over that, like probably 80 plus. So, and especially if you're shocked and you're trying to realize what just happened to you.
Besides, you might think it's an animal. I mean, you don't expect.
Well, I went all the way through his windshield, so probably by the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I get the call and I'm thinking there's got to be at least some substance left to this man. Well, there's not. So I actually called someone who was an intern working at the office at this time because she wanted to be an investigator. I'm like, hey, you want to come help me with this case? And she was really excited to do it. So I had a partner help me with this, and it actually made my job a lot faster. But we probably picked up body parts for a solid mile. We just grabbed a body bag, and my fingers were so cold. I had like 3 pairs of gloves on, but there was not a solid human being. I think the biggest piece that I picked up was probably one part of his leg was from like the knee down. And then like after that, it was like parts of his calf muscle, like a tooth, and like it was just like parts of muscle. And like an eye and like brain, parts of his scalp.
So what do? Do you have a shovel and you're just shoveling it off the road?
No, we're just picking it up. And then the fire department has to come out there, and then they are responsible for like hazard cleaning. So they have to then put this stuff down on the road, and then they have to like clean it off. They put like this powder stuff down, and then they have to like spray it off the road. Yeah, this was like January or something. So it was like windy, like the wind chill is like 10 degrees cooler. So it was probably like 6 degrees. So we're out there like on the road, walking down the road, picking stuff up, and they still have like one of the lanes open. So like people are like flying by. Yeah, driving past us as we're picking up parts of this guy.
I'm amazed because you guys are out there and you're trying to pay attention to your job, not the traffic. And
oh, they do that all the time. And people will be driving by on certain accidents, like taking pictures of us as they're driving by, taking pictures of the scene. Sometimes actually the highway patrol would run them down and give them tickets.
yeah, I'm just surprised though they wouldn't divert traffic.
Well, they can't because that's like the only way, like...
If this hadn't been such a spread out case on location, basically, do they put up some kind of barriers normally so people can't see if there's bodies that are maybe not fully out of a car, or do they completely close the road then where people cannot drive by and they cannot see?
Actually, sometimes some semis are nice enough. They'll actually volunteer to stop their semis to kind of put up blocks, or like fire trucks will block off.
Yeah, I would think it should out of respect.
Yeah, but some people are super crappy. So I'm like, why? That's going to end up on someone's social media or on the news or something.
The only thing I get out of all of this is everyone died quickly. I mean, they just died instantly. Nod your head, yes.
Well, he probably did not quickly. Maybe he got knocked out.
No, he probably did on impact, honestly, because if he was hit,
That hard.
yeah.
How were you able to identify him? His
Driver's license, car. How'd you ID him?
I don't remember.
car probably had car registration.
No, we can't do it by that. It would have to be something on his body. So I don't know if we were able to find a finger for fingerprints.
But you were able to identify him eventually.
Well, we would have had to, yeah. We must have been able to find a finger.
And it's probably hard to see when it's that dark on the road, right? So do you have flashlights or certain...
Yeah, the cops had their lights on for us.
Do they just follow you down the street with their lights on?
No, they would pull up their cars and then they'd have them on both ends for us.
Yeah, but if you're going like a mile down and having to pick stuff up, then that's... Or like a quarter mile even.
No, their lights are super bright. Like they have the ones on top that they can turn on.
Oh, the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is good just in time for New Year. So be careful in transportation. It's probably just better if you just sit inside for New Year's.
Mm-hmm. That's what I do. It's great.
Don't drink and drive, obviously.
I have some of those too.
Yeah. Don't run out of gas.
Yeah, just, you can't beat cars. You're not Superman.
Especially on a freeway. I mean, maybe on a 2-lane late at night, there aren't any cars, but 40? Come on.
I don't know. I've picked up homeless people that have tried that too. And clearly I'm there for a reason. So
Didn't work out. Well, if you have any questions, you can email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com. You can always check out our Instagram page, Diary of a Death Investigator. If you have anybody or you have a case that you want to hear, just like Jay, they're making faces. I'm trying not to laugh on here. We still haven't figured out how to record in person. And since it worked out last time, real mature, you guys, real mature. One day we'll let all of you guys see us all on camera, and then you'll be as impressed as I am right now. But until next time, happy holidays.
bye.